Welcome to the recording of the Ask the Expert session that took place as part of the Partner 2020 programme. This session was hosted by careers consultant Fiona Hartley, and she was joined by guests James Cheung, who is a design director, and Victoria Owen, assistant planner, for a discussion on the architecture and town planning industry. Each of these guests will be providing presentations that discuss their own career journey, and Fiona throughout will be asking questions submitted by you, the partner students. Without further ado, we're going to hand over to Victoria Owen, Assistant Planner at David Lock Associates, to introduce her presentation.
So thank you for inviting me to come and speak on the Partners Programme. I've been really excited to have the opportunity to speak to some prospective students for Newcastle University. I've got a close friend and colleague that attended Newcastle and absolutely loved it, so I'm sure the students will be in for a treat once they actually do get started. So as Fiona has kindly introduced, I started off with a BA Geography degree at Lancaster University and graduated from there in 2017, and that was where I first started to think about getting involved in a career in town planning. It was part of a GIS module that I did a site suitability assessment using the Brownfield Land Register to assess the site for suitability for a city centre cinema, which was a policy ambition of a local council. And so I was then put in touch with a local planning authority by one of my lecturers and did some work experience, and that's kind of the path that I took. I'll speak a bit more about that in a second. But then moved to the University of Sheffield and did my MA in town and regional planning. So I've done a bit of a snazzy timeline, a bit about my route. So yeah, started in 2014, and apparently I didn't do very much in 2015. But in 2016, I started my work experience. That was in Lancaster City Council. That was who I was put in touch with by one of my lecturers. And then I moved, once I graduated, to Sheffield and started my MA. And then I did a private sector work experience placement with Cassidy and Ashton. They're based in Preston. They're quite a small planning architecture firm. And I did about a week there, I think. And then during my MA TRP course, I started applying for a load of jobs. And that's when I secured my job for September 2018. At DLA. So I moved down to DLA in September 2018 and I've been there ever since. So everyone starts off as an assistant planner, as long as you obviously have an RTPI accredited degree. And I'm hoping to, in November, fingers crossed, if I pull my finger out, to be submitting my assessment of professional competence, which proves that I am a competent planner, and I will then become a chartered member of the Royal Town Planning Institute. And then some of these pictures I've added in just to give you a bit of a flavour of what I've been up to since I've been with DLA. So the top left one is sort of like a CPD networking event that we did, hosted jointly with Landmark Chambers, who are one of the leading chambers for barristers in the planning environment sector in the UK. So I've had an amazing opportunity to be exposed and working with James Marici at Queen's Counsel. He works with us on one of our projects in Oxfordshire, and so it was through him that we've been able to organise the CPD, and we had two parts to it, and unfortunately it had to happen virtually. It was supposed to be a nice event with wine and canapes in Milton Keynes, but we'll save that for another time, I'm sure. And then on the top right, there's the 80s party. So at DLA we're quite kind of focused on the social aspect as well as the professional aspect. And that was one of the parties. It was partly to celebrate our 30-year anniversary, as we founded in 1988. And so there was an 80s party to kind of reminisce for those that were around in the 80s. And I originally dressed up as a Rubik's Cube. The bottom left is the Young Planners event that I was able to attend up in Newcastle at the end of last year, which was really great. That's hosted by the RTPI. And it's kind of a series of conferences and day trips. So I was able to meet a lot of other young planners and other professionals in the industry, which was really, really valuable. And also really good to come to Newcastle because I haven't been that many times before. And then the bottom right is another aspect of the social life at DLA. We have a few sports teams. So I think they've got a cricket team and a football team. And I decided, because I'm a keen netballer, that I would try and organise a netball team. And we attended a tournament with, I must admit, a lot of other seasoned netballers. And we managed to come last. So that picture is me handing out the wooden spoons. But we all had a great day, and I'm glad that we did it. So a bit about DLA. We were established, as I said, in 1988 by David Locke and his wife Jeanette. I believe it was in, I think, the garden shed or something that they started the business, and it's grown into 70 plus employees today. And we're made up of town planners, urban designers, development surveyors, and then we've also got a communications and mapping team, which is kind of graphic designers, CAD technicians, GIS technicians, and we all kind of work together in a bit of a multidisciplinary way, work in project teams across a wide range of projects, which I'll talk a bit more about in a moment. We're owned for the benefit of our own employees and employee benefit trust. And we've also got expertise from a wide variety of backgrounds. So there's many of my colleagues have come from local government, who are particularly valuable to us because they know all about how local government works, can kind of help us to understand the pressures that local government are under at the moment. But there's also a number of my colleagues that have come from the development corporation days, and also a number of colleagues that have been in consultancies for the duration of their career. So this is just touching upon what DLA do. We're, I guess, mostly known for the large scale strategic projects that we work on across the country. So we are known for a lot of the, 1,000, 2,000 plus home schemes that we work on across the country and have been involved in for many, many years. So that's probably what we're best known for, but we have branched out. We do other planning and urban design services as well. So we've got half of the business is urban design and master planning. And then we also kind of work on the implementation of those large scale strategic projects, implementing the outline consents to reserve matters and actually helping the clients to get that on the ground and delivered. Also, there's a lot of my colleagues working town centre regeneration and those sorts of projects as well. So we do also do smaller scale development as well, which I'll come on to in a second with some of my project examples. And then I've got a few slides on our clients, I guess, and who we work for. So the ones highlighted are some of them that I've had experience in working with. So we do work for land promoters and landowners. So a lot of this is land promotion, taking the sites through the local plan process to be allocated and then sometimes going to an application. So that's an example of some of our clients there. And developers, we've worked for a number of developers and house builders from the small scale, which is Brick Hill Homes, an example that I'll come on to on one of my next slides, up to some of the major big PLC house builders and registered providers such as Places for People. We also work for the public sector. A lot of my colleagues work more for the public sector than I do, but there is a wide variety of local planning authorities that we have experience of working with here. And so I just wanted to take you guys through some of, I've got 3 examples of projects from the small scale to the larger scale, just to try and give a bit of a flavour of what an assistant planner might do on particular projects, and just talk through some of the work that I've been doing in the last couple of years since I've been with DLA. So Brick Hill Homes is a fairly small house builder based mostly in Buckinghamshire, and I've been able to work on a number of their projects, so which has been really great for my professional and personal development, because it means that I've been able to take schemes right from doing a site appraisal to actually getting the homes delivered and constructed. And I've also been able to project manage some of those schemes, so I've been coordinating the project teams with the ecologists and the architects and working to pull all the various documents together for the planning consents. And so Adams Close, the top one on your screen there, started off as a redundant scout hall, which you can see on the left picture there. And it was a vacant scout hall that was owned by the local authority. And our client purchased the land, asked us to do a site appraisal, And we went back and said, yes, this is suitable and we think that you'll be in accordance with policy and you'll be able to deliver residential on this site. And then the right hand side is a CGI of the scheme, which is pretty much constructed now. This is in Buckingham, and it's obviously, you can see it's almost a mirror of the existing properties on the right hand side. So we've tried to incorporate that and integrate it into the existing streetscape. And then the boot field is the bottom picture. So that was a project that I was brought into after the grant of outline consent. That's a project for 10 dwellings in a small village in Buckinghamshire again. And we worked again with the architect, some drainage and highways engineers and landscape consultants to bring forward the reserve matter submission. And we got consent for that towards the end of last year. So that was a greenfield site, and the development is kind of against the hedge and kind of runs in a linear form along there. And that is just starting construction just before COVID-19 occurred. They were just starting on site there. So those projects have been really exciting for me to get involved with, kind of hands-on experience with the client and the council, and being able to lead those has been really rewarding. And then moving on to kind of a medium scale project. This is Begbrook, which is north of Oxford. And so this project is on behalf of our clients, which are the tripartite, which is the University of Oxford, Merton College and a private landowner. And Begbrook is kind of envisaged in a draft local plan, which is for Cherwell District Council, as a mixed use neighbourhood of up to 1,950 dwellings. And so it's kind of located within the Oxford to Cambridge arcs. There's obviously a lot of growth going on in that area, envisioned by the central government in the next kind of 50 or so years. And this is part of the plans for that. So Oxford City Council has a really high housing requirement and literally doesn't have enough land within the city council boundaries because of the green belt to be able to provide the number of housing that they need to provide for local people within the next plan period. And so they've been working with adjacent local authorities, Cherwell being one of them, that Cherwell is going to try and help meet the unmet need of this housing requirement. And this is one of the sites that's been allocated. So I was able to attend the local planning examination last year. We went along with, like I say, James Marici, which was a really good experience. And I was able to attend that for 2 weeks and assisted in drafting some of the hearing statements and coordinated the project team and all those sorts of things. And so the top right image is the draft site allocation. And so it's all based around Begbrook Science Park, which is an existing spin-off of the university. And there's potential, this is the railway line on the right hand side here, there's potential for a rail halt there. And this is all along the A44, so there's extensive amount of work that's gone into kind of public transport provision and a bus route that's going to go in there, and links with park and ride. There's various constraints. There's a triple SI up here, so site of special scientific interest. So there's ecology considerations. There's also the requirement for some primary schools, and there's also constraints such as an existing landfill site, historic landfill sites. There's been various investigations as to whether that can be built upon or whether we need to have a buffer around that. And so my role within that has been a lot of organisation and drafting a lot of material and trying to keep on top of all of the other local plans to try and see what's going on in the rest of Oxfordshire, to see how our plan is progressing in the Cherwell local plan. And we're hoping to have the inspectors report back with us in the next month or so. And so that plan will then be adopted by Cherwell. And then we imagine our clients will then want to move on to submitting a plan application. So that'll be our next stage after the plan is adopted. And then the largest sort of scale project that I work on at the moment is Hamwood Park, which is east of Kettering. And so that has consent for 5,500 homes and various other land uses, a secondary school and some primary schools, a lot of green space, strategic open space, employment and district and local centres. And there's also provision, there's also an expectation for a big link road north of the site and an extra junction off the A14. And so at the moment, we're kind of twin tracking our approach to the site. And so we're doing an implementation of the consent. So we're submitting a lot of reserve matters, which we did just before March 2020, when there was a condition on the extant permission that said that we had to submit all the reserve matters by that date. So we ended up submitting applications for about just over 700 homes, 3 link roads and some open space. We are fortunate that the government has now said that the deadline to submit reserve matters has been extended due to the coronavirus pandemic. And so there might be scope for us to submit some extra reserve matters in the next year or so, before that emergency legislation is ceased. And so we're also now working towards a new outline consent for the remainder of the development, because it's mostly around this kind of western side that has been developed out. So there's quite a lot more of the site to be developed across the next kind of 10, 20 years. And so this is a CGI kind of taken from where that arrow is there. That's down what's known as axis E. And so you can see the residential parcel, the one in the foreground, is being built out by Taylor Wimpey currently. And then further along you can see this is an attenuation pond, which is kind of also going to be used for wildlife in the central bowl. And then kind of in the medium ground, you can see the district centre, and that's how it might come forward. We haven't got an application for that in at the moment, so this is just kind of an artist's impression of how it might turn out. And we've also got the linear park on your right hand side as well. And so in terms of my role in the project team, I'm one of 3 from DLA that is part of this team. So we're led by Duncan Chadwick, who's a partner at DLA, and he's a project director. And then Donna Lavender, my colleague, is an associate planner, and she's the project manager. And then I support and attend all the meetings with them. We have regular meetings with the client, who are Hamwell Park LLP and Kettering Borough Council and various others within the project team, just to keep abreast of all the development, because there's so much going on at the moment with it being such a large site and being developed so quickly. And I've also been able to kind of manage some of the smaller scale areas of the development. So I've been doing some of the applications for the link road and some of the open space. And at the moment I've been working on the community engagement strategy and the strategy of community involvement for the outline submission. So that's a very brief look at 3 of the projects that I work on and have worked on over the last 2 years. And then I finally wanted to kind of touch upon some of my top tips, knowing that students are going to be hopefully starting at Newcastle this sort of academic year. As a recent graduate, I thought it might be helpful to try and, I don't know, provide a bit of advice on what might be good things to do while you're at university. So my first top tip was to make sure that you're studying modules and topics that you are passionate about. It'll make sure that the long hours that you do spend in the library writing your dissertation and writing all your assignments, they aren't going to seem as bad if you're actually passionate and interested in the subject. And I also managed to pick a module at Lancaster that meant I went to New York, which was the top picture, which was a great experience. So your module choices really can open up a lot of opportunities for you. So definitely research those and make sure you're engaged and passionate about them. The second one is make the most of any opportunities that come your way. That's self-explanatory, but make sure that you know, if you have opportunities for work experience or to take extra time to improve your kind of learning, make sure you take them, and it'll definitely pay off in the long run. And then extracurricular activities, I definitely encourage you to get involved with the social and sports and all the extra stuff that you can do in Newcastle while you're there. While I was at Lancaster, I was in the netball team, and that's something I've always done and continue to do, playing netball. And employers do see the value in the transferable skills that you do gain from extracurricular activities, whether that might be like teamwork or leadership that you might get from something like playing netball. And they also like to know a bit about you when you go for your interviews. Something like being the captain of a netball team it can be a talking point in an interview and can set you apart from other similar candidates. And then work experience. So like I mentioned, DLA are doing a virtual work experience at the moment. So I would encourage anyone who might be watching this, if you're interested in some work experience in a career in planning, then get in touch with me, and my details are at the end of the PowerPoint. But work experience just kind of taught me the kind of career that I wanted to go into. And it also gave me an appreciation of the public and private sector, because they are so vastly different in planning. It gave me an idea of how the public sector works, obviously now that I'm in the private sector. And it also made me realise the type of work that I wanted to be doing. And so, yeah, definitely it'll make hopefully motivate you in your studies, but also make it clearer for you what you might like to do in the roles you might like to apply to once you have graduated, which might seem like a long way off now, but honestly, getting the time and the hours in early on is always a good idea. And then lastly, just enjoy it. I realise I sound like one of those people that says, oh, the university is the best time of your life. But I definitely would say that I've met some of my best friends at university, and it really is a life-changing experience. So make the most of it while you're there, and make sure you definitely enjoy it. So yeah, that's the end of my quick presentation. I hope that wasn't too long, but these are just some of our contact details for DLA, so you can find out a bit more about some of our projects that we work on. We're doing a series of blogs at the moment on LinkedIn, and yeah, my details are there along with my email address. If anyone's got any questions, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and drop me a message or drop me an email. I'll be more than happy to speak to anyone about a career in planning. So yeah, that's it really.
Gloria, that's great. Are you happy just to leave that last slide up, maybe while I ask just a kind of few questions, because it will give people time to absorb the information there. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions before we move on to James. The first one, initially, you mentioned the differences that you experience between working in the public and the private sector. Could you just say a little bit more there? What initially was quite striking to you about those differences?
I haven't got a vast experience in the public sector, so I can't advise too much on that. But I would say that in the private sector, I've been exposed, I would say, to a wide variety of projects. So if you're working in a local planning authority and you're doing development management, I would imagine that it's a very similar process that you're going through for every application that you get. Mm-hmm. Whereas I find that my days at DLA and in the private sector are very varied, and I might be working on site promotion, which will be similar to planning policy and the local planning authority, or submitting the applications and writing covering letters and outlining to case officers why we believe that a development should be approved, which is similar to the development management side of a local planning authority. And so I like to think I try and get kind of the best of both worlds there. And at the moment, I guess I would say local planning authorities are quite under-resourced and have a lot of pressure on them, especially in times like now. And so I'm privileged that I'm able to spend time doing things like this, whereas I imagine some of my colleagues in local government might not be able to do so. And so, yeah, I would definitely advise students to make sure that they do a good amount of work experience in both the public sector and the private sector, and that will allow them to kind of work out where they think they would fit in and enjoy working the most. So I definitely plan on getting some public sector experience at some point during my career. It's just kind of a case of when that might best fit in, but it's definitely something that I would like to do, just to try and broaden my horizons a little bit more and definitely learn a bit more about development management in detail.
Yeah, thank you. And earlier on in your presentation, you mentioned that you'd done a GIS module. Some of the students here may not know what GIS is. Perhaps if you're able just to say a little bit more about that, but were there other useful skills that you acquired during your degree that you feel are essential to the work that you do now?
Yes, so sorry, GIS is Geographical Information Systems, which is generally kind of online and the software that is used for mapping. So local authorities use it, and consultancies also use it. We have specialists in-house that do GIS. And so that was part of my undergraduate geography modules. And yeah, that was obviously, like I say, where I started off with kind of getting involved and interested in planning. And then, sorry, what was your second question, Fiona?
Other skills that you feel that you acquired during your university degree that are essential to your success in your job at the moment?
I think geography gave me a really good grounding of the built environment, and we had modules at Lancaster such as like urban infrastructure in a changing world, and like the GIS module, it was a really good base for me to then go and do my MA in town and regional planning. A lot of students do take that role and do a degree in kind of geography or a social science and then move on to do a specialised planning masters. And in terms of my planning degree, I would say that the module that I found most useful was planning law. And I've definitely used that a lot because obviously all the plan decisions that are made by local authorities have to be made in accordance with the legislation. And having an understanding of the legislation and some of the case law that's behind that also has been really invaluable to me. But I would say that a lot has been learned on the job, as it were. A lot of things that I use in my day-to-day life maybe I hadn't come across in my degree, and which isn't really the university at all. It's nothing like that. It's just that in practice it's very, very different to kind of the theories behind it, and how it has evolved and continues to evolve very, very quickly. So there's a lot in the news at the moment about potential changes in legislation, and we're expecting a big paper from Boris Johnson and some of his colleagues about potential reforms to the planning system. And so it is continually changing. But yeah, planning law, I would say, is probably the thing that I use the most regularly, definitely.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for sharing your hints and tips. And it's really appreciate you sharing your contact details there and inviting people to look at your LinkedIn profile. I know students are being encouraged to use LinkedIn more and more to open up conversations like we're having today. It's just a very useful way to gain insight that helps to inform career choice and open up opportunities that you may not otherwise hear of. So thank you for inviting students to contact you.
Thank you to Victoria for that wonderful insight and Fiona for those questions. We now hand over to James Cheung, Design Director for Chris Dyson's Architects.
Yeah, so I suppose this is a presentation a bit more personal, I suppose, my sort of journey through life in Newcastle, growing up in Newcastle, and then I suppose life going through Newcastle University through the architecture degree, and sort of the various practices I work with along the way, gathering, meeting some really fantastic people, over about 17 years of kind of just meeting fantastic collaborators and colleagues and architects, there's been a great journey so far. So I'd just like to share a little bit about that. So it's structured in sort of four subheadings: a little bit about me, a little bit about Newcastle University and life currently as an architect. I was born in Newcastle, so I'm a Geordie. Father came and joined the police force in the 70s, couldn't quite make it work. So he kind of opened up a series of Chinese takeaways. I kind of moved around a lot during primary school to middle school and West Denton High School in Newcastle. Kind of some really tough times, growing up, but quite enjoyable moments, staying with the family, working in the takeaway. So these are kind of some snippets of, kind of images that kind of resonate with my childhood, growing up in Gateshead, in a sort of terrace flat, meeting some friends just down the road in one of the sort of council houses, Spanish City, which we those sort of little joy moments when you go out and play with friends, supporting your local football team, although they always lose. Sort of Northumberland Street, then, was kind of a sort of car-ridden kind of shopping experience. It's just amazing how that experience has changed throughout the years. And my local school, West Denton. So And then a few more things. Yes, one of the sort of things, you know, I was growing up as a sort of Chinese immigrant family. Takeaway, you normally have to work back of house, but also front of house. I mean, that experience kind of, you know, in a personal way, kind of made you be more resilient with people, you know. So, you know, dealing with customers, dealing with hardworking, you know. So, you know, it's an interesting childhood, you know, but at the same time, you know, we're in communities that are actually sort of deprived and need help, you know. So we were opening up takeaways in places like Smith's Park, which is a bit rough and ready, you know. So the riots happened there. So there was a kind of, you know, realization that, you know, there are communities that are kind of struggling, you know, that need quite a lot of help, you know. And a few bits about Metro Centre and my little joys of going to Saltwell Park in the region, yeah. So my kind of life changed quite a lot when I went to architecture school. Lucky enough to get into Newcastle. It's got a long tradition of great architects coming out. That's Sir Terry Farrell, who I'll talk a bit more about later. But basically, it's got a great legacy. That's an example of when you get into Newcastle, you know, these sort of crit sessions, you know, where you're challenged about your ideas, you know, at such a young age, you know, you try and develop a kind of mythology of design and critique and appreciation of what is building, you know, what is an architecture, how does it affect the you know, other people when you build something, you know, and, you know, is it a viable proposition? Yeah, so it was a good place to challenge yourself. Late nights, but a very collective working spirit, and, you know, holding great exhibitions at the end, showcasing some of our best work. Yeah, so that's kind of my route going through Newcastle. I mean, it's about 7 or 8 years, you know, so it's a huge commitment on any sort of student, you know, to go through 2 years for the part one, and another 3 years for the part one and 2 years for the bachelor, and then you get the part 3 dip PPM at the end. Yeah, so during that time you get a chance to go out to actually do a bit of work experience as part of your qualifications to be a RIBA member and part 3. Yeah, so I had a great opportunity, you know, to go to Malaysia. It was about 6 months, recommended by my professor to look at. Well, he was quite famous at the time, looking at skyscrapers and tall buildings, and then came back to Newcastle after the, I suppose, Asian crash. I mean, it's interesting. Our industry is kind of hit by a lot of recession stuff all the way through. So I think that's kind of one thing I like to say. It's, you know, it's quite prone to dips, and you need to be quite inventive to sort of get yourself into different positions along the way on this sort of on this trip in architecture. So came back after the Asian crash, and then worked at a local firm, Falconer Browns, and that's a picture of the offices. So yeah, it's, you normally sort of get tutored by a director, you know, who has an interest in his job, you know, trying to deliver something of quality. Really well-run office in Newcastle. And now my second year out, interestingly, it was a kind of new firm. It used to be Allen J Partnership, but they call themselves Redbox. So another case in recession, sadly. They went bust 2 years ago, I think. Yeah, but it was quite an up-and-coming firm at the time that I joined in the 2000s. And we were sort of winning mega projects, you know, so we were winning big master plans on the banks of the Tyne. So that's kind of the Baltic Business Park, right behind the Music and the Sage and the Baltic. Winning mass housing along Dobson Street, yeah, and then doing lots of refurb for Cathedral Square, so office fit out, yeah. So yeah, it was quite refreshing for a Newcastle office to actually, you know, do these type of work. You know, that was my kind of first inkling dealing with planners. Yeah, how do you, you know, get something as 150 million pound scheme through planning. So that was my first dip into planning, and yeah, it's a fairly kind of diverse site, this Baltic Business Park. But I suppose my struggle then was, all these kind of gem projects, the Wilkinson Air Bridge, the Foster's Music Hall, the Dominic architects, Baltic flour mills. Yeah, these were going to London architects. So I felt it'd be great to go down to London and actually, learn from really, these great architectural practices, and actually, trying to enhance my career. So so this is my career path kind of so far, really. Yeah. So I went down to work with Terry Farrell, who was, I mentioned at the beginning, is an alumni from Newcastle University. And just as I was working on big master plans in the Northeast, he offered me a job to go down to do a big master plan in London, and also Newcastle University master plan stuff, as well as the city centre. So quite a big kind of step in terms of master planning. And then I felt that I needed a bit more retail experience in terms of, there was kind of a link. I think Farrell and BDP were doing a master plan at the time, so I went over to BDP to implement some of their retail master plans in Oxford. And then I wanted to go for a more boutique firm. So it's FLAC was sort of set up by 4 ex-Rogers directors, and then FLAC merged with Arup Associates, and then Arup get to a certain point. I felt I needed to do more London-centric stuff, where Arup were doing a lot of international stuff. So yeah, quite a diverse career. I didn't want to jump, but it just felt it was the right time to get different experiences. So yeah, great diversity. When you go on this architectural career, I was fortunate to go to Asia to do Beijing, Shanghai stuff, Middle East, Saudi Arabia, Europe, Milan stuff. Yeah, so I think it opened up, like Victoria was saying, it opened up a lot of opportunity for travel, and and other sort of building types around the world by going through architecture and town planning. So just a few of my projects. So Saudi Arabia did a 60,000 stadium. Mumbai Convention Center was a competition, which became second. So we won Doha Tennis Stadium, 12,000 seater stadium, after 2 years of bidding for it, and that was quite a challenge. But it was a beautifully conceived building because of the sort of sand typology, the sand dune typology, and the sort of more intricate kind of urban surgery stuff of reinvigorating a listed transformer room with a kind of cultural venue at Brownell Gardens in London. So quite a divergent mix of projects. And I suppose my career is kind of built a little bit on kind of engineering, well-conceived plans, logically solved complex program as this, such as a kind of multi-use sports facility where we had to sort of organize them in a sort of almost symmetrical panel sort of program along a spine, and try to minimize the volume by putting most of the structure on top. So we we don't have to heat up a massive space. Master planning, Greenwich Peninsula master plan, probably one of the largest master plans of its time. It's probably around 3,000 homes, 2 new schools, similar sort of scale to Hanwell, which Victoria was talking about, massive in terms of planning application and linking to the Millennium Dome. Quite recently did a master plan for Oxford, tighter street, different urban pattern, developed a bid, and it's more mixed use co-living, interestingly enough. And then did a lot with Heathrow and Gatwick in terms of releasing potential for their land, but actually giving them a vision of how you could put kind of a mini business park to function well right next to South Terminal, which is quite a challenge. And then again, master plans in China. So I had to be stationed in China to do this competition where it's a new city right next to the airport, and migrant housing in Doha for the people to cater for the workforce which are building the football stadiums at that time. Yeah, so quite divergent master plans. Yeah, so I think this illustrates a little bit of what we do in terms of selling a story to the client and planners. So we wanted to say that this is tighter streets. So most of the cars go on, I suppose, the left-hand side, and these are kind of more pedestrianized public realms, similar to Oxford. And having points of highness, I think at points, those vertical markers, to create a kind of uniqueness of a city. So it's unlike kind of the standard kind of layout that you get where it's car bound, within a sort of donut, so it's very organic in a way, it's similar to Oxford's urban typology. A lot of infrastructure stuff. So working with Arab, there's a lot of engineering, architecture, integration happening, working with TfL on the Blackfriars Pier, right next opposite to Tate. Jaguar Land Rover engine factory, where we had to simplify the facade, but actually make it quite a simple and nice building at the end. Arab had a sort of big push about environmental impact. This is even 10 years ago, where they wanted working on a power station where it was all about grabbing the carbon and putting it into a vacant gas chamber in the North Sea. So it's actually trying to tackle the carbon emissions. A bit of retail. So Oxford, John Lewis for BDP. This is the top of it. Trying to transform a kind of defunct shopping centre into a much more livelier, much more retail attractive environment for people to shop and play and congregate. And these are various projects where it's all about the human scale and smaller shop fit outs, which I was doing with a friend. And Resi. So you'll get a lot involved with Resi projects because there's a huge housing demand at the moment. So there's so we did a sort of kind of a 69 unit housing in Southwark. This used to be a service road. So we've been able to reimagine what that service road could be by opening it up and creating a public space, giving value to the residential apartments above and dragging the retailers from Bermondsey High Street, into here as sort of a boutique retail offer. And also mass housing and housing on top of listed property, which is quite interesting. So quite recently, we've got planning for a major residential scheme in London through the GLA. Sadiq called it in. We achieved 41% affordable on this, quite a tight site. It was in between A1 and M1. And we've been able to, it's not just the planning issues, we want to make it more efficient to build, great amenity space, increase in value. And then jumping around a bit, but more office buildings that I've been involved with around the world. So one in Stratford, one in Shanghai, kind of competition in Aldgate, Tokyo Tower, which became second. Yeah, but I think these are kind of the major wins, really. It's kind of being, going through a career as an architect. It's quite satisfying to have to win a competition to do one of the largest towers in the City of London. Still going through the rounds with the City of London, and then actually implementing Lendlease's office building in Stratford, their new generation of, I think WeWork might be moving in there or not. So these are kind of the projects in the City of London that have been looked at, or fortunate to look at. So quite diverse, East End to Battersea. So this is just a focus on the projects in Stratford. We took over a example kind of office building from Rogers. We won the competition to make it smaller because it's easier to let. So there's a lot of, it's not just about design, there's a lot of commercial reality, that comes in when you sort of working with developers, so it's you get a good mix of the viability of a project versus design. So but also you try to sell a story to the planners about, we're doing a very different office building. It's not just a normal glass building touches the ground. It's a building that has a human scale to it. It's a building that is broken up into many components, and it's split up by analyzing itself against its neighbors, because it's got terraces right next to us. It's got front south-facing terraces. It's got horizontal datums which we can articulate the office tower. Yeah, so we end up with a composition where it's more fragmented, so it's not as a singular object. And yeah, so design is important going forward. I think it's the planners like ideas. They engage. They have architectural critiques in their planning board. So we were critiqued by Piers Goff on this thing, where he said, yeah, it's good that we've been able to fragment the mass to create a human scale to the development, which is much needed in this area. And you do a lot of drawings to demonstrate what the type of environment you're trying to create. So this is just a sequence kind of running through towards the central space, and also trying to express the cinema kind of component fronting the square. Yeah. So I suppose in summary, I just wanted to say that, it's I suppose you need to, in the way of developing your architectural kind of approach, you'll develop, an attitude, to sort of solving complex problems, or the way you design. You'll have a slight shorthand in terms of getting what is right for the client, for a planning perspective, from a cost perspective, and it's through design, we're able to push boundaries, and through design, we'll be able to, work with planners or work with engineers or work with traffic consultants, so we share these ideas to come to the best design. And we get there, I suppose the architectural's kind of armory is, through sketching, through getting the ideas very quickly across, to say, does the plan look like this, or does the space look like this, or can the existing building work with the new building, can the tall building sit comfortably in its context, can a corner building be representative of an entrance or fit in with the listed fabric which is right next to it. Yeah, so I think, through drawing, which you will be through the architectural education, you'll be exploring little ideas and testing them very quickly to get to the right solution. I just want to put this out there, really. I think currently our profession's changing quite dramatically. The workloads are reducing, and many practices, kind of struggle to see, past, a few months, let alone a year. So, so there's big challenges out there. There's a lack of diversity, I think, in the system itself. I'm probably one of sort of 6% of the vast majority of architects who are, I suppose, Asian. And there's a lack of female architects in the industry. So I think in order for the architectural industry or construction profession to grow, I think there needs to be a lot more representative of who we're designing for. And I hope it's changing, and I surely hope it is, in terms of educating in Newcastle University. I think there's a lot of late night working culture going on, especially when I was in university. And I think it's up to the next generation to say, it's to hold a light to say, this is unhealthy, this is unsustainable, because I do want the architecture profession to be sustainable by having the right working hours, and being rightly paid for it as well. Yeah. So, and to be, increasing in mental health, and, guarding us from these sort of late night culture. Yeah. So these are just kind of statistics coming through, which is quite personal in the way, we want to get more diversity. we want to get more people from a bigger background, not just the privilege, but draw a larger pool from, that's was where I come from, in a way that, it's people would never thought I would probably go in architecture. Yeah. And it's expensive. I think there needs to be a way of actually trying to reduce the debt during the sort of 7 to 8 years education. Yeah, so I think there needs to be a lot of work to be done, which I think the RIBA is looking at. So generally, my route, talked a little bit about where I come from a little boy, Chinese takeaway, going to a local university, doing an architecture degree, working with great practices in Newcastle. Met my partner and wife at uni. That's an interesting point, especially for a long course. Major players in London, so I was fortunate to meet some great, fantastic people along the way, architects and engineers and planners who have, sort of fruits of success by getting planning approval and building buildings. I was sent to China to head up Arab Associates in Beijing, which was quite an honor as well. Working in sort of diverse regions, New York to Doha, Milan, China, meeting so many great people along the way. So I think, I suppose besides the statistics, I think it's interesting that, I think like Victoria was saying, it's, take every opportunity, I think, so I think I took every opportunity to get to where I am, I think, at the moment, and, done some really extraordinary stuff along the way, and fortunate to do it, I think, so I think I encourage you guys to find, your route through university and work life as well. Yeah, but yeah, and yeah, good luck to you all, really.
That's beautifully sounded advice, and I want to thank both yourself, James, and Victoria for giving us such a good and detailed impression of what it means to work in your roles. In summing up, Victoria's top tips about how to make the most of your time at university, hugely appreciated. And this final one about making the most of every opportunity, go out, be curious, try things. It's more how you learn about what you value and what you enjoy, because ultimately it's that pursuit of the things that you enjoy that lead you on to new opportunities. And yeah, both career paths provide challenges along the way. Just to students that are listening, and the career service is here to help you build on experiences, to develop those skills, to be able to connect you with professionals such as James and Victoria. So we wish you every success in your time at Newcastle, and please do use the careers service. So thank you very much, both of you, for your time, and that's where we leave it for today. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this recording of the Partners 2020 Ask the Experts session for architecture and town planning. We give our biggest thanks to Fiona for hosting this session, along with James and Victoria for providing such wonderful insight into their careers. Remember to stay up to date with Newcastle University Careers Service, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us at NCL Careers on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. We hope to see you in September. Good luck and take care for now.